So when Sarah Lewis discusses creativity, she means something more expansive than just the arts. She's concerned about more than just the arts, even though she is an art historian. So we might think of it more in terms of innovation. And true, some of her examples are drawn from the arts. The choreographer Paul Taylor or the screenwriter who won an Oscar for the film Juno. But other examples are the entrepreneur who developed and marketed Spanx from business, and from technology, Samuel Morse, who was a professor of painting at NYU when he invented the telegraph and really revolutionized the way human beings communicate. So Sarah Lewis devotes a chapter of her book to the relationship between creativity and social change. And she builds that chapter around a speech by the escaped slave and abolitionist Frederick Douglass. So Douglass is speaking shortly after the development of photography, and he addresses what he terms the picture-making faculty of the human mind, and argues that actual and mental images have a power to reveal to us failures, particularly in our social and political institutions, and also to enable us to imagine what could be better. And Lewis goes on to cite some examples. She argues that the image of hundreds of bodies packed into a slave ship that many of us have seen reproduced in historical textbooks played a crucial role in animating the sentiment that led to the abolition of the Atlantic slave trade. And she also points to those sort of big blue marble images of the Earth from outer space as having energized the environmental movement. So I'm sure that's all very welcome for Lewis, who is an art historian and devotes her career to images. It may also raise some questions that we should consider. 100 years after Douglass delivered his speech, does the proliferation of digital images potentially water down the effect that he was talking about? And what about problems that aren't especially photogenic? Will we need to wait to address the climate change until we find a really compelling image of that crisis? Are we no longer moved by pictures of polar bears stranded by the melting ice cap? When Sarah Lewis discusses the deliberate amateur, she focuses on a physicist who won the Nobel Prize when his team was the first to isolate a two-dimensional object. And what she notices is that he devotes time regularly in his lab to work on what he admittedly considers crazy things that may not pan out, but that would be really exciting if they did. And that he wanders outside of his area of expertise in order to see things in a new light. She complements this with a quotation from the choreographer Twyla Tharp, who says that experience opens doors, but experience also closes doors. So the deliberate amateur moves beyond their area of experience in order to see things in new ways and to be open to new possibilities. And I think in some ways this can address a question that entering college students might legitimately have as they're sitting down and choosing courses. If I'm an English major, why do I need to study science? If I'm a business major, why do I need to study music? And there are lots of good answers to that question, but Lewis's discussion of the deliberate amateur points to one possible answer. When we move outside our area of specialty, we enable ourselves to see things afresh, to question what's been taken for granted, and to see how things could be better. There can be a really productive cross-fertilization in that way.